With the end of the legislative session, a lot of people have described new legislation as being a good start to future progress. And what could Governor Lamont's political future look like? Joining us now to talk about all of this is Dan Haar, senior editor and columnist at Hearst, Connecticut Media. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Dan, lots of people looking at the bills this session have been using the phrase, it's a good start about them. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, there are very broad reforms that the legislature enacted. It tried to enact as broad reforms, but it ended up being partially broad reforms. I look at housing, for example. Despite protests from activist groups that don't like any housing reforms that require towns to do anything, it's a modest bill. It's not nearly as far along as the bills that were proposed in recent years, which failed. Same thing with your electric bill, your energy. The price you're going to see a price drop of $10 to $12 a month on average. And most people are, by the way, below average because a few people bring up the average. So the typical person is going to see $7 or $8 off their bill. Good start. They moved some things around to make a good start. The climate bill, same thing. Some tax cuts, some additional authority for DEEP, an aspiration for greenhouse gas of 0 by 2050, but not the really super strong reform that I think a lot of people had hoped for. So that's what I'm saying by it's a good start applying to basically everything.
All right, Dan. And let's talk about Lamont here. I think this made a lot of headlines this afternoon. Lamont's future, will he run again? What do you think? Lamont kind of gave an interesting answer this afternoon when he was asked this question.
Well, he did. He went a lot further than I thought he would. The Lamont runometer, the Dan Haar Lamont runometer has gone from 51% when last we spoke. It had been 60 and it was down a little because of a couple of things. I'm up to 80% now based on what he said. When you look at what he said, first of all, I love the job. And second of all, I think we've had extraordinary progress compared with where we were a year or two ago. He also said, I'm thinking about it seriously. I'm thinking about it with Susan, meaning Susan Bysiewicz, his lieutenant governor, who wants the job. I'm thinking about it with Annie Lamont. He talked about how it requires a person with experience to deal with the Trump administration. And he talked about having the ability to work with the Trump administration. Absent from anything he said was any downside to him running again. And of course, he would win, both because of money and popularity.
Any serious, real competition within his own party that may run against him?
Well, there are a couple of candidates. I think that William Tong, the Attorney General, and Susan Bysiewicz, the lieutenant governor, would not run if he were to run, both because of political expedience and because, they're smart. They're not going to beat him. I've heard a couple of other names kicked around from the left. Somebody speculated Josh Elliott, a very effective progressive legislator. Would he run against Lamont? He wouldn't win. But on the other hand, Lamont did some things to anger the left this year. So that's what a moderate does. So could he be vulnerable? Only in a primary. In a general election, absolutely not vulnerable.
Oh, all right. I think the Connecticut Republicans might have something to say about that, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us. Dan Haar.
I look forward to covering the race.
Yes, it'll be interesting regardless. Dan Haar, of course, writes for CT Insider. He writes about politics. You can find his columns on ctinsider.com. Eric Parker is